Hey friends, David Rose here. I'm running to represent District 30 in the Arizona House.
An elected official in Arizona is calling for the execution of a sitting United States Congresswoman, Pramila Jayapal, from Washington State.
I'm honored to have the endorsement of Representative John Gillette to replace him in the Arizona House and continue this fight.
In the wake of all that's taken place, he's calling for her killing, for her execution. And I don't know what you think about what political violence is, but when the state, when the government executes someone, that's about as politically violent as it gets.
The man who is running currently for Legislative District 30 here locally to be our representative in the Assembly, a man by the name of David Rose, local journalist here, Jennifer Esposito in the Mojave Free Press has written about this man extensively. He's a convicted criminal. He did serve his time and all that, but he also claims to be a preacher of the gospel. He has a church. He's a pastor in a church down in Lake Havasu. He's on Lake Havasu City School Board. Well, he wants to be in the Assembly. I've tried to have a dialogue with this man since he claims to be a Christian. He has the endorsement of John Gillette, the outgoing representative, who said in spring of 2024, and I quote, "I support every effort by Israel to drive Gaza into the sea." Well, we know what he meant by that, to kill Palestinians. Okay, just didn't have the guts to say that explicitly. So I asked Mr. Rose at a public meeting, of candidates meeting, do you agree with that? He said, yes, no question. Ignored that and started giving me his testimony. And I stopped him and I said, that's not what I asked you, sir. Do you agree that that's right? Yes or no? Well, I never got an answer from that, okay? Why not? Well, you can't. You have to, if you're a Christian, you have to say no, okay? Period. End of story. They won't do this. They're cowards, basically. And they're phony Christians. I'll call them, I'm not judging them. At the end of the day, God is going to judge them for all eternity. I'm not doing that. All I can see and anyone else can see is the fruit of what they do. They claim to believe in Jesus Christ, the Prince of Peace, and yet they preach death and destruction to human beings made in the image and likeness of God, many of whom are their Christian brethren, because there are many Palestinian Christians.
Representative Gillette called the January 6th rioters political prisoners in other posts to social media. Now, they have all since been pardoned. Now, Representative Jayapal from Washington State released a statement about the lawmaker's comment, saying, quote, "An elected member of the Arizona State House of Representatives called for me and those who advocate for nonviolence resistance training to be tried, convicted, and hanged." Going on to say this is appalling, unacceptable, and dangerous from anyone, but particularly from an elected official.
But let me tell you who this guy is. John Gillette is his name. Former cop, former brutal, aggressive cop.
I'm honored to have the endorsement of Representative John Gillette to replace him in the Arizona House and continue this fight.
Maybe the most violent cop in the country when he was there. Unfortunate political violence is unacceptable, he says. We conservatives use words. So he's against political violence.
As the endorsement of John Gillette, the outgoing representative, who said in spring of 2024, and I quote, "I support every effort by Israel to drive Gaza into the sea." Well, we know what he meant by that, to kill Palestinians. Okay, just didn't have the guts to say that explicitly.
Check out the so-called endorsements of the so-called pastor. David Rose? John Gillette? Really? This association raises legitimate questions about judgment and vetting. Political endorsements reflect on both parties involved. Voters in LD30 would reasonably want to understand why a candidate seeking public office would accept or promote an endorsement from someone with Gillette's documented history of internal affairs complaints and recent controversial statements calling for violence against elected officials. Could it be that it is because David Rose also has issues of his own? Is David Rose, the so-called pastor, a product of lies, deception, scams, and fraud? And isn't it true that birds of a feather always flock together? The public should also take a closer look at who Pastor David Rose affiliations are. Isn't it true that David Rose is associated with a scam artist by the name of Leslie Tyler? Take a good look at who these swindlers, crooks, and frauds are affiliated with. And by the way, is Pastor David Rose also involved in the real estate business? So why is David Rose now begging the public for $10,000 when he has an abundance of business ventures along with his wife, Crystal Rose? Is David Rose even legally qualified to run for office? Did David Rose actually petition Arizona to set aside all his felonies of swindling the public as well? And who is Crystal Rose? Where did they meet? What's her middle name? What's her maiden name? Where did they marry? Etc. The public needs to know this information because this so-called pastor is not only begging for and collecting thousands of dollars from the public, but he is asking voters to put him in an authoritative position. What other kind of business ventures is David Rose involved in? Has he ever started other ministries where he refused to file annual reports? Why hasn't David Rose filed the annual reports? What is the reason? Has any debt collectors been after David Rose currently? So many unanswered questions. But to be involved with these kinds of people shows his character. So as far as being a reformed man, well, just take a good hard look at his friends and his current behavior.
Gotcha. Totally makes sense. It's tracking now. I'm with you, John Gillette. I'm with you. Gillette, of course, because he's a coward, has not yet responded to requests from the Guardian for comment. Now, let me tell you a little bit about who this piece of shit is. This former cop. This disgraced former cop who resigned as soon as a law was passed. By the way, he moved from Illinois to Arizona.
I'm honored to have the endorsement of Representative John Gillette to replace him in the Arizona House and continue this fight.
Yeah, I guess to get away from his past as being a brutal cop. But they passed a law in Illinois that made a court ruled that internal affairs files concerning cops can be made public. They can't be shielded from public view through Freedom of Information Act requests. And as soon as that happened, he resigned. Here's the headline from the State Journal Register. Was Gillette a rogue deputy or a good cop? And then as a result of the ruling that I just explained, the State Journal Register has obtained files on Gillette and other deputies and is seeking more records from the Illinois State Police and the Springfield Police Departments. And this is how brutal a cop he was. Listen to this in comparison to the other complaints of brutality that were made against his particular department. By himself, the article says, Gillette racked up more complaints during his 13 years on patrol than the entire department generated in 2005, 2006, and 2007 combined. Based on the volume, seriousness, and number of sustained complaints, Gillette should have been fired long ago, according to Samuel Walker, a University of Nebraska criminologist who is considered an expert on police misconduct. Quote, "This is one of the worst cases I've heard. Just hearing his record," Walker said. "This sounds really pretty shocking. This officer should have been long gone. There is really a serious failure here. Given the frequency and severity of complaints, there comes a time when the agency has to say enough," said Meyer, who retired in 2001 but remains a sheriff's chaplain. Quote, "I deem law enforcement a profession, and you need to remove those who are not professional." Why would we expect any different? Look, I'm not an ACAB guy. All cops are bastards, but I'm an MCAB guy. Most of them are.
I'm honored to have the endorsement of Representative John Gillette to replace him in the Arizona House and continue this fight.
And what happened in 2007? This device came out, and all of a sudden, there's video evidence of cops being cops. So you got this cop, John Gillette, elected representative in Arizona, calling for the execution, murder.
So I asked Mr. Rose at a public meeting, of candidates meeting, do you agree with that? Say yes, no question. ignored that and started giving me his testimony. And I stopped him and I said, that's not what I asked you, sir. Do you agree that that's right? Yes or no? Well, I never got an answer from that, okay? Why not? Well, you can't. You have to, if you're a Christian, you have to say no, okay? Period. End of story.
What's up, guys? David Rose with DavidRoseKnows.com. And what's up, guys? It's David Rose with DavidRoseKnows.com. And hey, what's up, everybody? David Rose with DavidRoseKnows.com. And hey, what's up, guys? David Rose with Herb Jones Chevrolet Buick GMC. And what's up, everybody? David Rose with Herb Jones Chevrolet Buick GMC. And hey, what's up, everybody? It's David Rose with DavidRoseKnows.com.
And what are some of the ways that we identify people or ourselves? Number one is character and attitude.